Hey guys, welcome to Say Mojo Homestead. I'm Jeremy, this is Cassandra. Today we're going to be pruning our grapevines. One thing that I notice around here is there's not a lot of people that will really prune them, just because they don't really know how. And they can get really unruly, and you really just kind of sacrifice the size and quality of the grapes on them. So that's why we're going to be doing that. Also, I wanted to let you guys know what we have coming up. There's just a lot of kind of prep stuff like pruning that needs to be done this time of year. So we're going to do videos on that. Some of them will be like pruning different fruit trees that we have out here, like apple trees, peach trees. Those are pruned differently, so each one we'll just devote a whole video to. And so if you've got any of those, definitely check that out, see if you're doing it right, or learn how to do it. It is also just about time to process our rabbits, so I'm thinking in the next week or so we'll probably do a video on that. We'll be sensitive with all of that, but if that's something that you've ever thought about doing and you just kind of want to see what's involved with that, keep an eye out for that. But today it is the weekend, so before we go any further, we're gonna do highs and lows. Why don't you start?
Okay, so my high is definitely that we had 2 baby goats go to new homes today. They are going to a family that's really super excited. So it's nice when you have babies that you're selling that they go to just a fun house. They're going to be pets. They're going to be loved on really well. Yeah. And they're just super excited. So that was fun to watch them go home with them. My low was probably that, we're starting to get into competition season with dance, and I work at our studio, so there's lots of last minute things that needed to be dealt with. I just felt like it was kind of chaotic and crazy. I like routine. I think I like things to be kind of laid back. I don't know. It was a little chaotic this week at our studio, but we're ready and everyone has what they need. And we have a big production showcase this weekend. So it's kind of an exciting yet stressful time.
Yeah, I can see that. It is. I kind of have a love-hate relationship with this time of year. The girls love it, so, that does factor into the love part of it, but just the hectic schedule, I hate that. So it is going to be the next few weekends. We'll be hit or miss with Cass being in there. We'll make it work. We'll make do. Who knows? Maybe I'll do highs and lows with Josiah. That could be interesting. So for me, there's a lot of just kind of little things that went on this week. I think probably my low was our dishwasher went out, 4.5 years old, and not under warranty. Found out that we got like the worst brand out there. Yeah. We just didn't do our research when we built the house, and it's just trying to keep everything in budget, all of that stuff. Yeah. But it got us 4.5 years, and now we have one of the best ones on the market, so hopefully we'll get a lot more years out of this one. My high was that I got to take kind of a more relaxed, laid back work week this week. Again, one of the perks of owning your own business, but I always do try to do that in February, just because March it starts gearing up and getting into like super high gear in landscaping. So I do always like to try to just sort of take somewhat of a down month in February, not take it completely off, but just a little bit more laid back. So this week was really kind of that key week, which was nice. Yeah. So yeah. I feel like we should do a predator update.
Yeah. So this is almost my low, but we haven't nothing's happened with the predator, which is a high that it hasn't been back. But there's still that like lingering, will it come back?
Right. What if, when?
Yeah. So The fact that it's still an unknown is a little concerning for me, but I have to say I have been sleeping better the past couple nights, which is nice.
Yes.
That I actually feel like I'm sleeping.
Me too.
We are sleeping with the window open, our bathroom window open, so we can hear. And I'm wondering if it gave up, because Jeremy did a really good job making our fencing very tight. Even though it was able to dig, it couldn't get under and through the fence. So I'm hoping he just gave up and he's not going to be back.
Right. This is not a predator that eats them, so it's not seeing it as food.
Yeah.
So it's doesn't have that hunger drive, but
Right.
it's just basically a killing sport for it. And so I think that it just hopefully just isn't worth the effort to get into ours, because it's not easy enough.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
we'll see. We'll keep you guys posted. Hopefully there will continue to be nothing to keep you posted on. No predator activity this week.
Yeah.
So very thankful for that.
Yeah.
But we're going to start the grapes.
Yay!
So here's a couple of things before we really do get started and go over there and start talking about it. Trimming grapes, there's two different types of grapes. There's your European grapes, which are your more traditional like wine grapes and stuff like that. And then there's American grapes varieties. The most common of those are like scuppernons, muscadines. We don't have muscadines that we're like training on a trellis or anything, but we do have American grape varieties. Table grapes is what most people refer to them as. They do grow differently than your European style. So that is one thing. Also, you do want to prune in the wintertime, but you want to make sure you're not going to have any hard freezes after you prune it, because you'll risk damaging them. I did check our extended forecast, and we are supposed to be just slightly above average the next 2 months. That doesn't mean that we won't get a hard freeze, but I feel confident that there'll be enough time for everything to really harden over and not create any kind of damage. So we're going to go ahead and do that on our grapes.
Okay, so here we are in front of our grapevines. Now, one thing we really like to focus on is how you can homestead on a small scale. So we only have 7 grapevines right now, and 4 of those grapevines are only 2-year-old plants, and the rest are 3-year-old plants. You won't really get a lot of fruit off of them until they're 3-year-old plants. So last year we got these gorgeous, very large bunches of grapes, and they were just amazing. So trimming is why we could get those big clusters of grapes. I wanted to tell you we have 2 different types of the white grape and 2 different types of the purple grapes. I'm not sure on the varieties. We planted them a while ago and we just didn't make a note of it. But the one thing I do want to tell you is that out of these fairly young plants, we were able to get 12 pints of jelly, which we do about a pint a month. That's about what our family goes through. We don't use a lot of jelly. 3 fairly nice sized jars of raisins, and then of course we just enjoyed eating them fresh. So even though we don't have a huge vineyard, we are actually getting quite a few grapes from these 7 plants, and our production will just increase as the plants get older, which is so exciting to me that in the future we might be able to make grape juice or do some other fun things with the harvest. So these are our grapevines, and you can see it's just taking up one small row of space. This is something we've lined our driveway with it. It's something that you could very easily put on the side of your house. Just make sure they're in full sun and they have well-drained, fertile soil.
So one thing that you may notice about ours are that they are not trained in that traditional way where you run the canes along a bottom one and then let them grow up. Kind of like what you would see in like Napa Valley or something like that. The reason is because those are European grapes, and that's the way that they naturally are going to grow. Their spurs are going to go more up and vertical, whereas American varieties are going to be more of a hanging down type thing. If you're familiar with muscadines, that's like the classic example of an American grape. They're going to grow up into trees and they sort of like lay over and hang down and just grow downward. Basic terminology that I'm going to be referring to is you've got your trunk, which is obviously the part of the vine that grows up, and then you train it to have two canes, which are what are going to grow off and grow horizontally. And then the spurs are what come off of that, and that is really where you're going to get most of your growth and all of your grapes. So as Cass had mentioned before, you want to prune them because it's going to encourage bigger clusters of grapes and just better quality grapes also. They will produce if you don't do it. They usually are, just a handful of grapes in a cluster if you don't prune them. The other thing is that it makes it really hard to maintain them and to get to those grapes if you just let them grow wild. It also could promote disease. But right now we are going to focus on pruning this thing for growth production. I've got my pruners, I've got two, but they're pretty much the same. I don't need anything bigger than this. If you do have more mature vines that are thicker than these are, you may have to go with a bigger lopper to cut through those. Now, there are a lot of different ways that you can do this. You can really get into like major technical ways of doing it. This is just a very basic overview of how we do it. So I'm gonna try to keep it as easy as possible so that if you have them, you could do it. If you have healthy grapevines, there's really not anything you're gonna do that's gonna majorly hurt this thing. The biggest mistake people make is not cutting enough off. If you cut too much off, not a big deal. It's gonna push out growth. It'll be just fine. If you don't take enough off though, you're gonna end up with just a weaker vine. Not unhealthy, but just weaker because there's that much more growth that it's trying to support. Pruning in the first 2 years is all based on training it out and getting it to grow the structure that you'll then use for the rest of the life of the grapevine. So you can see that this was trained up. So really the first year overview, you want to train it up. Second year, you're training your two main canes. And after that, you're just going to be cutting back the spurs, cutting back the canes to promote good growth. So let's get started. There's a lot of different ways to do this. The way we do it though is we will follow the canes out about 4 feet and then cut them off at 4 feet. So we're gonna shrink these horizontal ones down to only 4 feet. These are grown at 8 feet apart. So we'll basically cut them in half. And after we do that, we'll start pruning on the canes. So this is the easiest part. One thing you want to look for on this are the buds, which is another term. The buds are all of these little swells or bumps along it, and that's where growth is going to start. So on this one, again, I'm not going to pull out a tape measure for this. This is about halfway. This one is too. I'm going to go with this one. You want to stay about 1 inch off of it, cut it, and that is done. We will come back later and clean up all of this stuff that's stuck to it. You do want to make sure it's got a good hold on your wire. If not, you can tie it on, no big deal. So this cane is going to start growing from this point this year and continue along this wire. So now it's time to go for the spurs. Now, if you've ever seen a grapevine that has like all these big knotty sections along it, the older ones, that's where they're going back and cutting it back every year. So ultimately, that's kind of what this will turn into, which personally I think looks really, really cool. And I can't wait till I start forming those big old knots. We do have a lot of character in some of our trunks. They are a lot of twisty and turny kind of shapes. It's fun. So on these, you want to leave at least 1, if not 2 buds. So those little swell points. And you also kind of want to look at the direction they're growing in. You want them to be more on the top side because they're going to push out growth on the top, and then that's going to, like I said, kind of fall over and hang down. So with this one, again, leaving about 1 inch off of it. The reason you want to do that is because it's going to harden and callus over right here. If you do it too close to the bud, you risk it callusing over the bud and that bud not being able to grow. Now, I did find that last year, not all of these ended up being viable, but there were enough on the vines where I didn't have to worry about it. and it was fine. So you do want to look for unwanted canes or spurs like this one. Now some people will tell you, go ahead and save this one in case one of these don't come back. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to go ahead and cut it off. I don't want that to put off any more growth, so I'm going to come just above where it comes off of the main trunk, cut it, and it's gone. No more. It may try to push out growth right there, but that's why next year we'll come in and do it. Now this one could be my reserve if this half doesn't make it. So I'm going to go ahead and just leave this one. If I don't need it, it's a spur that will produce grapes. So it could double. All right, so this one's pretty much done. If you do have some of these that are too close, you may want to go in and thin those out. These look pretty good, at least for this year. Come next year, I may thin some of these a little bit, but this is going into the first year of real production. So for now, I'm just gonna leave this one as is. So that one is done. It's really that easy. There's not a major science. If your grapevines are healthy, you're not gonna hurt it. It's gonna appreciate a good haircut. You just go along. Again, these are the very basic principles. I will probably keep an eye on it, go back and maybe get into more of that technical trimming stuff just for the sake of hours, but this really is good enough if you've got them. American grapevines are really easy. They're not nearly as finicky as your European varieties. One thing that we did not touch on, the reason we grow American is because our summers are just way too hot for the European varieties. So we really have to do with the American varieties to have any kind of success. So I'm gonna finish up the rest of these and we will come back when I'm done. This is actually the first trimming of like probably 3 that we'll do throughout the year. You do want to do one once the grapes start coming on just to thin them out some, and then another one later on to open the vines up a little bit so that those grapes can get the sun hitting them. But this is the main one. This is like, out of the 3, this is the most important. You can skip the other 2, but this one is definitely the most important.
So that's all we have for you. We would love to hear your feedback. Be sure you comment and we can answer any questions, or we love to read the comments. So we enjoy you interacting with us.
Yeah.
But we hope you all have a great week and be blessed.